So I hope you'll be enlightened with this lecture about the importance of Sunday. So the title of the lecture is Happy Sunday, Rediscovering the Joys of Sunday. So as we know, first I will quote Pope John Paul II to give us the gist of everything. Sunday is not just equal to Sunday Mass, although a very big part of it is about Sunday Mass, but it's not just about that. John Paul II said, I don't know why it's not, hold on. So on my screen, it's not moving. So I'll just read from the what is projected. Today, I would strongly urge everyone to rediscover Sunday. The rediscovery of this day is a grace which we must implore so that we may respond concretely to the deepest human yearnings. I'd like to focus on that, deepest human yearnings. And that already gives you a clue why Sunday is important. So it's not, of course, as we were saying, Sunday Mass is very important. That's no question about that. But it's even beyond Sunday Mass. So those words of Pope John Paul II, responding to the deepest human yearnings, are very provocative. Are you already thinking, parang, do you have some intuition? Sunday is just going to Mass and that's it, no? Not really. Not really. There's a lot more to Sunday. As we know, the Sunday has 4 ends. So, worship day, rest day, family day, and charity day. So, here, you can already see that it's not just attending Mass. Again, that's non-negotiable. Attending Mass, definitely. We have to worship God. That's for sure. But it's not just that. It's rest day. It's family day. It's charity day. So not many people would associate Sunday with charity day. Parang charity, well, I don't know when, but sometime in the future. So here, from the Catechism of the Catholic Church, we are encouraged to do charity work on Sundays. In general, I follow these 4 ends in the book, more or less. But because the lecture is only one hour, so I will skip Charity Day, and I will not focus so much on Worship Day because I already assume that you already have that subject in sacraments and in other theology subjects. So I won't discuss the Worship Day so much. Rather, I would focus on Rest Day. What is rest? What is leisure? Why the necessity to rest? Is it a physical need? Because, as you remember, you're experts in the Bible, you know that Yahweh rested on the 7th day. Napapagod ba ang Diyos? Why would He rest? If it were a physical need to begin with, God is Spirit. So, you can already have some intuition that it's not just about physical rests. Okay? So this is the outline of the lecture. Don't worry. I will finish in 1 hour. Don't worry. So, I will focus mainly on number 4. And, 4, 5, and 6, basically. 1, 2, 3 is just very quick, just to complete the picture. So it's not really, we're not really going to dwell there. Okay, so far, I want it to be very clear to you where we are going. So Sunday as worship day, as rest day, as family day. And then within the rest day, so here you have the Sunday work, the obligations of Catholic employers, And then we will dwell quite a bit on number 6. Especially the last part of number 6, contemplation. So now, I think you can already somehow intuit that, there is really something more. And that's why you also understand why John Paul II dared to say that Sunday responds to the deepest human yearnings. That's a very lapidary statement, to say that. Para bang over-promising? No, he is not over-promising. Because it's really the truth. Why? Because God is the author of Sunday. God created Sunday. So it must be something very good. Okay? So far, so good? So, biblical foundation of the Sabbath. I suppose you are familiar with that. We already quoted it a bit. So I'll just go through it very quickly. On the 7th day, God completed the work He had been doing. He rested on the 7th day from all the work He had undertaken. God blessed the 7th day and made it holy, because on it He rested from all the work He had done in creation, as early as Genesis. Okay? But in the history of salvation, that there was no Sunday for the slaves, Israelite slaves in Egypt. There was no Sunday. Sunday was just another working day as a slave. So it will come later on with Moses. Now, with Moses. Remember the Sabbath day, keep it holy. 6 days you may labor and do all your work. But the 7th day is a Sabbath of the Lord your God. You shall not do any work, either you, your son, or your daughter, male, female, slave, work animal, resident, alien within your gates. In 6 days, the Lord made the heavens and the earth, the sea and all that is in them. But on the 7th day, He rested. What probably you are not familiar with, not so much, is Exodus 31. So, I'll just spend 3 more seconds here. Whoever desecrates the Sabbath shall be put to death. So here, I would like you to understand why the Pharisees were so critical of our Lord Jesus Christ, when Jesus Christ was apparently breaking the Sabbath. It's something very serious. Death penalty. Wow. Nothing less than death penalty. So, it's because of Exodus 31. This was actually implemented. When you read the Old Testament, you will see that this was implemented. An Israelite was working on a Sabbath. He was caught. He was stoned to death. As serious as that. Okay? Anyone who does work on the Sabbath shall be put to death. So shall the Israelites observe the Sabbath, keeping it throughout their generation as an everlasting covenant. Now, we go to the New Testament. This one, we are very familiar with this. The disciples were picking the heads of grain, and then the Pharisees, they were saying, "Why are you doing what is unlawful in the Sabbath?" And then our Lord said, Have you never read what David did when he was in need, when he was hungry, when he and his companions were hungry? And then He said this, "The Sabbath was made for man, and not man for the Sabbath." So here you have like the equilibrium. Okay, so Sabbath, death penalty. But the spirit of the law is that the Sabbath is for man. Yeah, like a good, loving father, God is a good, loving father. He wants His children to rest. Like our own parents. I suppose your parents want you to eat well, to sleep well. Like a good dad. So God wants us to rest. So it's not man for the Sabbath, but the Sabbath for man. That is why the Son of Man is Lord even of the Sabbath. And then another passage is also important. This will become the basis of the theology precisely on the third commandment. The conclusion especially when he said, it is lawful to do good on the Sabbath. Okay? End of section 1. So far, so good. This is a holy hour. Okay, so how do we understand the Sabbath today? I will not dwell anymore. Everything that I will not discuss is in the book. I left one copy with your president. So this is the book. There is a discussion. Sabbath is Saturday, so why it's Sunday? So I will not go into that anymore. It's in the book. So we just assume that now the Sabbath, the Catholic Sabbath, is Sunday. Okay? So how do we understand the present day Sunday, the Lord's Day, Dies Domini? In fact, in Spanish, it's Domingo. In Italian, it's Domenica. Well, from the Latin, Dominica, I think, in Latin. So the day of the Lord. Okay? So how do we understand? This is the this is the teaching of the Catholic Church, from the Catechism of the Catholic Church. So, on Sundays and holidays of obligation, the faithful are to refrain from engaging in work or activities that hinder the worship owed to God, the joy proper to the Lord's Day, the performance of the works of mercy. So that's why we are saying that it's Charity Day as well. And the appropriate relaxation of mind and body. Okay? So this is from the Catechism 2185. So, refrain from engaging in work or activities that hinder the worship owed to God. In the next number, in the next section, section 3, we will discuss the worship of God, but very, very quickly. Okay? And then the Catechism also said, so this is now the application of what our Lord said, that it is lawful to do good, even on the Sabbath. So, translation in the Catechism, so this one, family needs or important social service can legitimately excuse from the obligation of Sunday rest. So take note of that. The excuse is from the Sunday rest, not from the Sunday worship. There is no excuse from the Sunday worship. So dalawang obligations, just for clarity, Sunday worship and Sunday rests. Rest is obligatory. So family needs, important social service, can legitimately excuse someone from the obligation of Sunday rest. However, the faithful should see to it that legitimate excuses do not lead to habits prejudicial to religion, family life, and health. Now, there are two sides of the same coin. So one side is people who are resting. The other side are people who are working so that other people can rest, like restaurants. Restaurants, or usually restaurants, sports center. It's not very famous in the Philippines, but in other countries, sports centers are more famous. So restaurants. So according to the Catechism, those Christians who have leisure should be mindful of their brethren who have the same needs and same rights, yet cannot rest from work because of poverty and misery. In other words, if it can be avoided, better to avoid giving work to other people. Before coming here, I was telling the people of where I live that I'm going to be here. So they were asking, Father, what about barber shop on a Sunday? Can I go to the barber shop? Well, I think you will not die if you don't have a haircut on a Sunday, no? You can have it on a Saturday. So the idea is if you can avoid giving work to other people, better avoid it, because they also have their families. Keep in mind that every employee has a family. Yeah, the reason why I wrote this book is because I was assigned in Laguna. Laguna has many economic zones, industrial zones, factory workers. And it's not impossible, it's not difficult to find factory worker who had not gone home on a Sunday for 52 Sundays. He has not seen his family. 52 Sundays. 1 year. You talk to a security guard. 10 years. They will go home twice a year or once a year pala, Christmas. And usually they do alternate. One security guard is on duty on Christmas, the other is on duty on New Year. They see their families once a year. So, the effect on the families of that is super serious. We will consider that in the 7th section, absentee parents. Okay? So, Christians will also sanctify Sunday by devoting time and care to their families and relatives. So, you were saying that no, it's a family day. You eat out, or you just gather together, you visit Lola, you play with the cousins, things like that. It's a family day. You know, we have to preserve and defend that. I lived in Europe for 6 years. And it's really a broken society. You know, one day I heard in the news, I saw in the news, an elderly French woman who died in his apartment, and it took the public authorities 4 months to discover that there was someone who died. 4 months! That means nobody ever visited her. Nobody ever called her. So the isolation, the individualism, etc., etc. So now, okay, now you see, Sunday is not just worshiping God. Very important, but also family day. Okay? Now, the Sunday Mass obligation. So, the Catechism says, you shall attend Mass on Sundays and on holidays of obligation. And, of course, those who deliberately fail in this obligation commit a grave sin. So, that one is very clear. Everybody knows that. How many people go to Sunday Mass, weekly Sunday Mass in the Philippines? Actually, nobody knows. So this is from SWS survey. Well, survey is a survey, no? So it's not really, anyway, so this is the result. So in the 1990s, not so long ago, there used to be 65% of the Filipinos, Catholics of course, go to weekly Sunday Mass. 2017, it's down to 40. Okay? You see? Do you see any problem? It's a very big problem. It's a very big problem. Actually, when I started talking to parish priests, asking them to verify if 40% of their parishioners go to Sunday Mass, the answer is no. They multiplied the size of the church, how many can fit, and the number of masses. And the result is only about 8% go to Sunday Mass. So that's 92% don't go to Sunday Mass. So we have a lot of work to do. We have a lot of work to do. If you include those who go to Mass once a month, twice a month, then the number will increase from 38 plus 24, so around 70%, more or less. More or less. But again, if you verify it on a parish-to-parish basis, that might not be true. Maybe going to Mass means dumaan sa simbahan, nag-sign of the cross, and that's already attending Mass. Nagsisimba ka ba? Opo. Dumaan po ako at nag-cruise. Nagsimba na po ako. So no, of course not. No? Okay, so now this is the real meat of the lecture. Imagine I'm only talking for 15 minutes. So I'm already in number 4. So now we can go deeper. Okay? So there is this reality of Sunday work, unfortunately. Sunday work. Many people work on Sunday. I want you to guess how many are working on Sunday, more or less. So in the Philippines, we are, I don't know now, 110 million o 150 na ba? I have not checked the latest statistics. Employed people, working people, I really don't know. I have to check Dole. But how many do you think are working on a Sunday? Are we talking of 100 persons? So, you will find out later on in a short while. So, Pope John Paul II already complained about Sunday work. It should not be forgotten that even in our own day, work is very oppressive for many people. So work in general, not only Sunday work. Okay? So, because of the working condition, because there are many cases of injustice, because of exploitation by man. So, well, the Chinese, I'm a Filipino Chinese, we have a very bad track record on this. Filipino Chinese. So most of us are businessmen. Well, my parents were businessmen. So abuses, things like that, is very common present tense, is very common in the Philippines. But not only that, if we include the Sunday work, then you add more pains, no, to the workers. And that's why the Catholic Church, when the Catholic Church made laws on Sunday rest, the church had in mind, above all, the servants and the workers. The church thinks of protecting the workers. It needed greater regulation to lighten its burden so that everyone could keep the Lord's Day holy. And that's why Leo XIII already spoke of Sunday as a worker's right. In the book, I discussed more thoroughly, well, actually in the other book, in Render to Caesar, but in Happy Sunday, I also discussed a bit the Industrial Revolution. People would work for 16 hours. How many hours are there in a day? 24. Imagine working for 16 hours, as young as 10 years old. So that's what happened in the UK, in Britain, in Europe, in the Industrial Revolution. Unfortunately, that still happens at lower scale, but that still happens today in some countries. But let me tell you that even during the Industrial Revolution, there was no work on Sundays. There was no work on Sundays. Even if there were so many abuses, but Sunday, there was no work. So in 1961, finally, the European countries, what's now the European Union, so they agreed that there will only be 40 hours of work per week. So that's something quite recent. The 40-hour work week is something recent. The countries also agreed about leaves to provide pay during public holidays, and then 2 weeks of vacation leave paid. In the Philippines, we only have 5 days of paid leaves under the law. And then we are interested in number 5. In number 5, the European countries said there will be a weekly rest period, which usually coincide with the traditional rest day. In Europe, it's Sunday. In the Philippines, what day is it? What is the rest day in the Philippines? So, well, precisely that's what we are going to discuss more. It used to be very clear that it's Sunday. But precisely, many people are working now on Sundays, many businesses, Catholic businessmen. Some of them are practicing Catholics, and yet they opened businesses on Sundays. That's really the reason why I wrote the book. Parang, you are Catholics, aren't you? Why are you opening and then you're forcing the employees to come to work on Sunday? So both of you are not resting, are not worshiping God, at least not regularly, probably on some Sundays. So the European Union said we will have a weekly rest, which would coincide on Sunday. So the Philippine law, so this is the Philippine Labor Code. It says, okay, no problem, 8 hours per day, and then 5 days or 6 days a week. So in the Philippines, it's 40 or 48 hours per week. Well, it's a bit high. In Europe now, it's normal to have 37.5 work week, 37.5 hours per week. Not only 40, but less. In the Philippines, it's still common to have 48 hours. Security guards is 12 hours times 6. So, wow. And then in some places, they're not even allowed to sit. I don't know what's the difference between allowing the security guard to sit, the sales lady to sit, and not. Will there be thieves who will come if the guard is sitting? I don't know. But if you're a poor employee, you don't have the guts to complain because you might lose your job. Reklamo ka, tatanggalin ka sa trabaho. So, just be quiet. So there are many abuses there. And then the Philippine Labor Code also says that every employer is obliged to give a rest period of not less than 24 consecutive hours after 6 consecutive normal work days. Do you see there the word Sunday in that law, in the Philippine law? So there is no Sunday in the Philippine law. So the Philippine law only says basta 24 consecutive hours. It can be a Friday, it can be a Saturday, it can be a Monday. There is a caveat. So the employer shall determine, it's the employer, not the employee, who will determine the weekly rest day. But the employer must respect the preference of the employee if it is based on religious grounds. We are Filipinos. We know the psyche of the Filipino psyche. How many Filipinos will insist he's right? Maybe 1%. I don't know, very, very few. That I can rest on Sunday. No? I think very few Filipinos would do that. They will just accept whatever the employer would tell him. Okay? But by law, they can demand Saturday or Sunday. Okay? And then the IRR, you know that when there's a law, there is an implementing rules and regulations. The IRR says all establishments may open. Now you see the word Sunday, but it's the opposite. They may open on Sunday. So that's what we have now in the Philippines. So we may say that the Philippine law is a bit not in favor of the Sunday rests, Sunday worship and Sunday rests. And that's very unfortunate because you're in the Philippines. Imagine if you are in Saudi Arabia and you encourage people to work on Friday. Muslims, they rest on Friday. Imagine if you're in Israel and establishments are open on Saturdays, you will have a big trouble. Okay? So that's why John Paul II said, the church is prepared to accept only those arrangements which preserve a week of 7 days with a Sunday. And I want to focus a bit or to highlight the last 3 words. Given its many meanings and aspects and its link to the very foundations of the faith, the celebration of the Christian Sunday remains an indispensable element of our Christian identity. Sunday is our identity. If you read the history of the church fathers in the 1st, 2nd century, they would say, we don't follow the Sabbath anymore because we are Christians. We follow Sunday. That's our identity. Keep in mind that the first converts were Jewish Christians. So they were asking, do we still go to the synagogue on Saturday? So that was a big question before. So our identity is Sunday, the Lord's Day. Okay? Kaya ba? Huh? Are we still in the same channel? Okay. So we were talking about the Philippine Labor Code. That's 1974. But it was not always like that before. So when the Spaniards were here, there was what we call the Sunday law. Okay? So now, Sunday law, meaning it's the law of the government. It's a civil law with punishments when there are offenses. So that used to be the law of the country. Okay? So, Sunday law, the Sunday legislation, this began in the year 321 with Constantine. Before, Sunday was just any other working day. But Constantine made it a special day. He commanded all the judges, so first the judges, and then the inhabitants of the cities, to rest on the venerable day of the sun, meaning Sunday. So that's the beginning of the Sunday law. So that's why you would read in the church histories, that the Catholics would go to Mass early in the morning so that they can still go to work, because it was an ordinary working day. But starting 321, little by little, some people stopped working, beginning with the judges and some other people. And John Paul II said, and therefore, the Christians, the Catholics, we rejoiced, because now we have the obstacles removed. We can now have some time, that until then had sometimes made observance of the Lord's Day heroic. So now we could have time to worship God and to rest as a family. Okay, so that was a very, very big achievement in the civil law. So now it's legal to rest civilly. So you see, with what is happening in the Philippines, we are going back to the pre-Constantine era. After Moses, or Yahweh through Moses, liberated the Israelites from the Egyptians, after Constantine gave the liberation, quote unquote. So now, if we don't watch out, especially us, ecclesiastical people, church people, if we don't defend Sunday, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, decades from now, things will be very different in Manila, in the Philippines. In the provinces, not so. But in the cities, constructions are going on, even on Sundays. Many shops are open on Sundays. Okay. And then, 425, year 425, all labor was prohibited. So, that's it. That's the Sunday law. And that's why, through the centuries, King Charles of England, which became the basis of the American law, until today, the U.S. has the Sunday law, depending on the states. Some states are very strict, some states are less strict, but they still have the Sunday law. Most European countries have Sunday law today. Okay? So, Germany, you know, the one who really defended the Sunday law, were not the Lutherans, were not the Catholics, but the labor unions in Germany. Because they saw Sunday as a real need. Not for religious reasons, actually. Not for mental health, for physical rest, to be with friends, to drink a lot of beer in Germany, of course. No? So the labor unions were the ones defending it. So there is what you call a worldwide Sunday alliance. So maybe there are 100 associations worldwide. So there's the French Association, there's Spanish Association, there's an Italian Association of the defenders of the Sunday rest, the Sunday Alliance globally. Philippines, we don't have it yet. So in Germany, this is in the Constitution. Nothing less than the Constitution itself. Well, if it's a commandment of God, why would we be surprised? Sundays, specifically, and holidays, well, because you're not talking of other religious groups there, no? You're not talking of Jews or Muslims. They are Christians. They're Lutherans and Catholics. The southern Germany are mostly Catholics, Bavaria. The northern are mainly Lutherans, Protestants. Sundays and holidays recognized by the state shall remain protected by laws as days of rest from work and of spiritual improvement. Constitution. And then the lower law, the shop closing law, as recent as 2003. So they require shops to be closed on Sundays and public holidays. And on work days, weekdays, the shops could be opened only from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m., a very, very healthy schedule. Because they have families. You know, we have what we call the Anihan Technical School. We train people for restaurants, mga cooks, parang culinary arts. And sometimes the alumni would come back and they would narrate their stories in the food industry. Wow, it's very tough. It's very tough. They want to go to mass, but they could not because the work hours were just so difficult, so tiring that, well, because of physical exhaustion, they could not. And the owner of those restaurants are Catholics. So that's why it's really the irony, the one punishing we may say the new Egyptian slave drivers are fellow Catholics, owners of manufacturing companies, owners of construction companies. In the UK today, so on Sundays, large shops may open for no more than 6 continual hours. So this is actually my proposal to the restaurant owners. Open your restaurants only for 6 hours and then have a break and then another 6 hours. So there's like shifting work shifts. So the group 1 will go home after 6 hours. The group 2, well, they work 6 hours. So the group 1 can go home, attend mass, be with their families. Okay? I think it's you open your restaurant but with that staggered schedule. So it's win-win for everyone. You know, I lived in Navarre, northern Spain, and what we have here as the Mercury Drug, how do you call it, farmacias, the pharmacies, no, botica. So they have the association of boticas, the pharmacies. And they agreed among themselves that, for example, if there are 12 boticas in a certain city, so, okay, on first Sunday, Botica 1, 2, 3 will open. On second Sunday, it's Botica 4, 5, 6. So the other boticas are closed. And that's pharmacy, that's emergency, no? And they're able to make it happen. Not for religious reasons, but because it's a real need. Of course, for us, it's a religious reason and also for family and rest reasons. So it can be done. It can be done. Even for pharmacies. Okay? So this is my proposal, the 6 continual hours based on the UK law. So in the Philippines, in Manila specifically, there used to be a Sunday law. This is a municipal ordinance, obliging, of course, everyone to close shop on Sundays. So, Manila was like the Philippines, because outside Manila, there were very little things. And then there was a Republic Act, 946. So we used to have a Sunday law. This was promulgated in 1953, and it was in effect until the Labor Code, 1974. So it used to be prohibited to open shops on Sundays. There's a long list of exceptions. the usual things, no? Hospitals, etc., etc. Okay? So it used to be pro Sunday, pro rest, pro family, that the Philippine law, but now no more. So it used to say no commercial, industrial, agricultural enterprise shall be open, no construction or repair of any building or other kind of structure be done. And that's why John Paul II said, it is not normal that Sunday should not also be a day of rest. So again, to defend Sunday, we have to defend it, especially us, priests and nuns, ecclesiastical people. Because if not, who else will defend Sunday? Who else? Constantine. Patay na si Constantine. So this is a direct indication of John Paul II. Christians will naturally strive to ensure that civil legislation respects their duty to keep Sunday holy. Yeah, that's why I would give the book to some congressmen, to some lawyers. Somehow, let's see if they get enlightened a bit. I gave the book to all the bishops of CBCP also, just last January. Because we still have the chance to defend it right now, 2025. But years later, probably it would be more difficult already. So John Paul II said that, the obligation to rest, even if one is working in a restaurant, is still there, no? And also to take part in the Eucharist. And he also said that in spite of economic constraints, public authorities should ensure citizens a time intended for rest and divine worship. Employers have a similar obligation. Okay? So now, how many are working on Sunday? How many are working on Sunday? Well, nobody knows actually. I just went to the Philippine Statistics Authority, it used to be NSO, now PSA, and I just look at the different industries who are more likely open on Sundays. So, of course, restaurants, they're open on Sundays. Okay? So restaurants, there are about 500,000 employees working on a Sunday. Restaurants. Manufacturing companies, about 1.3 million. Surprisingly, hospitals, they only have 150,000. Transport sector, they only have 200,000. The arts, the recreation industry, very little, less than 100,000. So in total, you have 2.3 million at least who are working on Sundays. That's 2.3 million families as well who don't see their dads or their moms. 2.3 million at least, because I did not include the security guards, the sales ladies, etc., etc. So, what damage can that do? 2.3 million who don't go home in many Sundays. Do you think that can destroy the families? Of course. Of course. So, well, I chose that picture intentionally. So that looks familiar to you, the Egyptian slave drivers forcing the Israelite slaves. This is an exaggeration, admittedly, but just a little exaggeration. Not so much. Wait for a bit more, some more years, some more decades, and it will be a reality. Sunday will just be Sunday. It's a weekend, no? What did you do last weekend? And mass, family will no longer be in the picture. Okay. So the question is at the end, or at the end na lang, ano? Wow, I'm happy. I'm moving fast. I thought I will not finish, so I'm now in number 5. I even remove Charity Day because I said, well, this is just too much. Obligations of Catholic employers. So, basically, two things. Most Catholic employers, they think, in fact, I'm talking to an owner of a famous restaurant. If I say the name, I'm sure you know the name, but I will not say the name. Because this video I will also show to the son. I'm a good friend of her son. So, because what they know is that as long as they encourage the employees to go to Sunday Mass, and then they pay the right amount of salary, SSS, benefits, etc., their obligation is over. No. You are obliged, the employer is obliged to give the employees time to rest. So that's why I was telling you earlier, so from the 8-hour shift, it can be reduced to 6 hours. With 2 hours less, two working hours less, I think to begin with, that's already good to begin with. So they can go to Mass, and then they can spend a bit of time with their families. I'm not asking for more. If they can reduce it further, better. But for now, it's okay. 6-hour shift. Somebody was asking, and what about the salary, Father? Kasi when they used to work for 8 hours, the salary is X pesos. Now if it's 6 hours, so it will be 20% less, 25% less. And then, well, that's where the generosity of the Catholic employer comes in. You know, there's a restaurant in the U.S. which is number 1, Chick-fil-A. Does it ring a bell? Chick-fil-A? Chick-fil-A? Jollibee. Chick-fil-A, no? Chick-fil-A is one of the top restaurants in the U.S. They never open on Sundays. Never. From the very beginning in the 1940s. The owner is a Southern Baptist. Of course, not a Catholic. Sorry. So he's not a Catholic, but he always observed the Sunday rests. Never. Until today. So the clients, the customers of Chick-fil-A, if they want to buy the products of Chick-fil-A, well, they know that it's closed on Sunday, so I buy on Saturday. And that has been the case for 1940s, for several decades, since 1940s. Another business entity, Hobby Lobby, would also close on Sundays. Actually, there are a number of shops who are closed on Sundays because they really believe that it's a holy day. Okay? So, 2 obligations of the Catholic employers: to provide the employee to attend Mass, and then some hours of rest with the family. Those are the obligations of the employers. We already quoted this earlier, that every Christian must avoid making unnecessary demands on others that would hinder them from observing the Lord's Day. Traditional activities, sports, restaurants, etc., and social necessities require some people to work on Sundays, but everyone should still take care to set aside sufficient time for leisure. And in spite of economic constraints, is still from the Catechism, public authorities must ensure citizens a time intended for rest and divine worship. So, well, my invitation, because there is no law that forces the employers to close their businesses on Sunday, so it's just an invitation as a priest. I invite the Catholic employers to close on Sundays, to emphasize that it is our sacred day. It's our identity as Christians, as Catholics. Okay, have you heard of this phrase? So you pronounce it either servile, if it's British, or servile, if it's American pronunciation. So I would use servile. Have you heard of this servile work? It's not being taught anymore, no? Even in UST? Servile work. So servile work. So this has been a traditional concept in theology. So this is, who is the one in the picture? Oh, baka hindi nyo kilala. I'm in UST, so. So it's from Summa Theologiae. Okay, so of course the usual article in the Summa. So he said, two things are to be observed in the Halloween making holy. That's why Halloween making holy, Halloween making holy of the Sabbath. One is that man should occupy himself with divine things and cessation from work, not working. So that's so servile work is the second part, cessation from work. And that's why in the many catechisms, even before the Catechism of the Catholic Church, well, you had the one of the Council of Trent, but in between, Baltimore Catechism is very famous, so you have it here. The third commandment forbids all unnecessary servile work and whatever else may hinder the due observance of the Lord's Day. So this has not changed, huh? By the way. Well, doctrine does not change. Okay? This has not changed. What changed is the manner of expressing it, but the teaching is the same. We will see it in a very short while. So servile work, according to Catechism Explained, 1899, is that which entails severe physical exertion and is costing to the bodily strength. So servile because it's the work of the servant. So physical. Okay? Now, my Catholic faith, does this ring a bell? Bishop Morrow? Hindi. Hindi rin nyo alam. Hindi nyo rin narinig. My Catholic faith. It's a very famous catechetical book that was used in Catholic schools in the Philippines for many decades with a lot of pictures. That's why it's very popular, my Catholic faith. So he said, employers who force their employees to do unnecessary servile work on Sunday are responsible for the violation of the third commandment. And it makes a lot of sense. You are studying moral theology, you know that. It makes a lot of sense. So they're responsible for the violation of the third commandment. Employers should make it possible for the employees to comply with their religious duties. It's the same idea but expressed in a different way. Those in charge of persons who are necessarily on duty on Sundays, such as policemen, firemen, soldiers, are obliged to give them an opportunity to hear Mass. 1949 is before Second Vatican Council. That's before the change of the Eucharistic fasts to 1 hour. So Eucharistic fast used to be from 12 midnight until the time of the Mass. That's why Masses before were always in the morning. Kasi 12 midnight and then the Mass is 5 p.m. Napakahabang fasting nun. So that's why the Masses before were all in the morning. But when the law on the Eucharistic fast was changed from 12 midnight to 3 hours, and then today to 1 hour, so there are now Masses in the afternoon, anticipated Masses the previous day. So people can really go to Mass now, even if they are on duty. I mean, on duty at certain hours, off duty at certain hours. I was talking to the security guards of a certain university. I was giving them a catechetical class. And the OIC, he said, Father, madali lang po yan. So, may morning shift at may evening shift. Yung morning shift, hindi duty sila. Kami, magsisimba kami. Mamaya, evening shift kami, sila naman magsisimba. So, on their own, they arrange their schedule. Because there are now many Masses. But when this was written, 1949, there were only morning Masses. So, and yet, the author, Bishop Morrow, was saying that the ones in charge are obliged to give them an opportunity to hear Mass. So we quoted this already earlier. We are just emphasizing it a bit. So this is now the development, not the change. So the servile work is no longer mentioned in the Code of Canon Law, nor in the Catechism. So the phrase servile work does not appear anymore. What appears? What appears is this. So to cover the wider reality, sorry, I have to go back to the... so it says here, to refrain from engaging in work or activities. So it's not servile work anymore. It's any work, it's any activity that hinder the worship of God. Why? Because what used to be labor-intensive before, because of technology, is no longer labor-intensive today. So, therefore, any unnecessary work or activity or business, whether servile or not, whether manual or intellectual, are still prohibited. So we have to emphasize that. It's still prohibited. With the Catechism of the Catholic Church today. You know that there are two, well, it came out in 1992, but there's an update, 1997, so the definitive is 1997. Okay? So now we are in section 6. Rest, leisure, and contemplation. You want to rest? 2:35. So I only have 10 more minutes. Hindi ko pala kakayanin. Ito pa naman yung exciting na part. Okay. So, rest is over. So, rest, leisure, contemplation. So, especially leisure. Well, leisure is like the secular term of rest, of Sabbath. But they refer to the same thing, actually. Both rest and leisure. So, Yahweh said, when you enter the land that I am giving you, let the land too keep a Sabbath. Land, keeping a Sabbath. Napapagod ba ang land? For 6 years you may sow your field, and for 6 years prune your vineyard, gathering in their produce. But during the 7th year, the land shall have a Sabbath, a complete rest. A Sabbath for the Lord, when you may neither sow your field nor prune. So, you can see the insistence of Yahweh. So, rest is really God's idea. You know, that's why rest should never be an occasion to offend God. Pag sinabi mong rest today, sometimes they refer to sinful activities sooner or later. But rest is originally from God. And what is heaven? What do we say when a person dies? Requiescat in pace, rest in peace. Eternal rest. So rest is really very deep. It's not just doing nothing. Ano ang rest? Nakatunganga. No, rest is not like that. No. Rest is not like that, no? Okay, so, but you can see from the Bible that Yahweh is quite emphatic about it. So now we begin the deep consideration about rest. So this is from Aristotle, not a Catholic, not a saint, but quoted heavily by St. Thomas Aquinas. So, he said that when we are, especially nowadays, we are so much into facere, not to do things. Aser, to do things. A person his value is almost equal to what he can do. He's a businessman, is able to make a lot of money. Therefore, he is great because he can do things. Rather than esse, rather than the being. Okay? So, he is saying, if a person cannot do actions, and therefore he cannot produce, what is left in him, if not contemplation? Think of bedridden people who cannot get out of bed, of course. What can they do? They can think, they remember things, they look around, they can love, they can contemplate. So Aristotle was contemplating, reflecting about contemplation. If you take away from a living being action, still more production, what is left but contemplation? Therefore, the activity of God, which surpasses all other in blessedness, must be contemplative. Of course, he was referring to Zeus, to Jupiter, etc. No? Eventually, Zeus, Deus, Theus, Zeus, and the Dios in Spanish, and Dios in Tagalog also, God. So the activity of God must be contemplative. Human activities, therefore, that which is most akin to this, must be most of the nature of happiness. Okay, this is very important because he is now connecting contemplation with happiness. Keep in mind what John Paul II said at the very beginning. Sunday responds to the deepest human yearnings. So now we are talking about contemplation, now happiness. This is indicated too by the fact that the other animals have no share in happiness, being completely deprived of such activity. Happiness extends, then, just so far as contemplation does. You can be happy when you contemplate. Keep in mind that he is not a Catholic. He is not a Jew, Aristotle. He's a Greek. So we're not talking of Santa Teresa de Avila, the mystics, the ecstasies, the locutions. No, this is Aristotle. So, happiness extends just so far as contemplation does. And those to whom contemplation more fully belongs are more truly happy. Happiness, therefore, must be some form of contemplation. And how do you define heaven? You are theologians. Mga theologians o tulugjans? Mga theologians, how do you define heaven? Well, beatific vision, contemplation of God. We will see Him face to face, but now we see Him dimly as in a mirror. Does that sound familiar from St. Paul? What is heaven if not contemplating God? You created us for yourself, O Lord, and our heart is restless until it rests in you. So, naintindihan na ninyo, Sunday, worship, perfect. But it's more than worship. It's also rest. Rest, contemplation. It's about contemplation. It addresses the deepest human yearnings. So that's why we have to recover Sunday. We have to defend it before we lose it. This is a theological definition of contemplation. Contemplation is the act by which the mind of the believer peers through and savors the luminous spheres of divine truths. Okay? So now, reality, however, is that we are busy, we've lost our Sundays, especially, so there's an author here who is not a Catholic, I think he's even a Buddhist, Pico Iyer, The Art of Stillness. So he's complaining that we have lost our Sundays, our weekends, our holy days, as some would call it. So especially now with text messages, so everybody can reach everybody anytime. And then Seneca, of all people, only those are leisure who make time for philosophy. Only those are really alive. Oh, that's a lapidary statement. A person can go on and on, eat, sleep, eat, work, day 1, day 2, day 3, for 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 1 decade. But if a person does not philosophize, if a person is not at leisure, you know that the Greeks, they look down on manual work. Of course, that's not correct because our Lord Jesus Christ was a manual worker, a carpenter. But the Greek philosophers, they look down on manual work. They said that for a free man, for a non-slave, what is proper to a free man is contemplation. What makes a man man is contemplation. So nothing to do with Christianity, I insist, because they exist. That the Greek philosophers were referring to were before Christianity. So they already have that intuition, which Jesus Christ, especially in the Gospel of Saint John, would explain very well. Contemplating the contemplation of God. Okay. Of course, you have Kierkegaard. Of all religious things, the most ridiculous seems to me to be BC. Some people said BC is like an acronym for being under Satan's yoke. Hindi ko alam kung pilit yun. Pero anyway, somehow it makes sense. Why can't you go to Mass? Because I'm busy. Oh, let's pray. I'm busy. So, well, being under Satan's yoke. But even this guy, Soren Kierkegaard, was complaining. No, it's very ridiculous. Okay, so I will skip this. Sayang, maganda pa naman to. So I'll go to leisure. So this is Joseph Pieper, German philosopher of the 20th century, not so old. So what is leisure exactly? Leisure is an attitude of mind. It's a condition of the soul. So it's not simply non-activity or noiselessness. It's an inward calm. It's silence. It is a form of silence. Silence that is the prerequisite of the apprehension of reality. Apprehension in the philosophical sense. Okay? Not apprehension of a policeman. Apprehension is apprehending through the senses, no? The philosophical apprehension. So, silence is a prerequisite of the apprehension of reality. Only the silent can hear. So it's a very big problem today because of the social media, because of the videos. That's why it's very difficult to pray. Kasi prayer, you're looking at the tabernacle or you're looking at the cross, hindi naman gumagalaw. We are so used to videos. So that's why it's good to recover the silentium magnum as it used to be. But this guy, Joseph Pieper, he's not a saint, he is not a theologian, he is a German philosopher. He's talking of leisure as the basis of culture. So this is a secular description of leisure. Only the silent hear, and those who do not remain silent do not hear. Leisure is a receptive attitude of the mind, a contemplative attitude, the capacity for steeping oneself in the whole of creation. Silence, leisure, is like the tranquil silence of lovers. And that's why you can easily detect God. You can easily put God into the picture. Well, God is very much in the picture. John Paul II has many stories of how going up the mountains, the Alps, would help him to pray. He would see God in the mountains. Well, as well as our Lord Jesus Christ, of course, no? Imitating our Lord. The many mountains of Jesus. Even the beauties of nature, too often marred by the desire to exploit, which turns against man himself, can be rediscovered and enjoyed to the full. So, well, so Sunday should be a moment when people can look anew upon the wonders of nature. Okay, so last section. Sunday is a family day. Sunday is a day to nurture relationships. So relationship is a very important word. So you can say relationship with God and relationship with the family, if you want to summarize it. So that's Sunday. You know, there's a very interesting study from Harvard, longitudinal study, meaning 80 years, several decades long study. Have you ever done a study like that? Mamamatay ka, 8 years. What we would do is a term paper or thesis. So this is an 80-year-old study about happiness. What makes man happy? So they studied the Harvard graduates of 1939 to 1944 and also another group in the Boston neighborhood. So anyway, you can check it in the internet. It's a well-documented study. I just go to the conclusion. The question is, what makes man happy? From a secular, psychological, sociological point of view. So it came out in TED Talk. So these are the results. The surprising finding is that our relationships and how happy we are in our relationships has a powerful influence on our health. Kanina, contemplation is equal to or very much related to happiness. Now what we are saying is relationship is very much related to happiness. Actually, they are not contradictory because contemplation is also loving a person, like a mother contemplating her baby, like a husband contemplating his wife, and like a believer contemplating God. Contemplation is another form of love, actually. So, relationship, it's very important, and that's what Sunday is, and that's what Sunday is for, or one of the purposes of Sunday. The director, so there had been several directors because it's a very long study. He said, taking care of your body is important, but tending to your relationships is a form of self-care too. How many families eat together? May trabaho si tatay, may trabaho si nanay, nasa school yung mga anak. When will they eat together? And then, the parents will find out a problem only later on, post factum. Because they had not been talking. People who were most satisfied in their relationships at age 50 were healthiest at age 80. Loneliness kills. It's as powerful as smoking or alcoholism. When you read the entire when you watch the entire TED Talk, you will understand it a bit more. It's a very, very interesting study, but we are summarizing it so much actually. Good relationships do not protect our bodies, they protect our brains. And those good relationships, they don't have to be smooth all the time. Some of our octogenarian couples could bicker with each other day in and day out. But as long as they felt that they could really count on the other when the going got tough, those arguments did not take a toll on their memories. Families are permanent. And that's why on Sundays, the relaxed gathering of parents and children can be an opportunity not only to listen to one another, but also to share a few formative and more reflective moments. In the Philippines, Bishop Sok, he was talking about the article published by UST, actually, Bulletin Ecclesiastico. The topic is OFWs. What happens to the families of OFWs? And he wrote provoking questions. Does the family still matter to the Filipinos? Importante pa ba ang pamilya? Does it matter sufficiently to come before other considerations that may sacrifice the unity of the family? Does the Filipino find in family ties and bonds a value so high that others, including the prospects of higher salaries and more comfortable living, can be sacrificed for it? Because we know that many families are destroyed because of absentee parents. The husband is in Saudi, or the wife is in another country, in Qatar. So these are the realities today. Age 15 to 24, only 66 were raised by both parents. If I do a survey here, if someone comes from a broken family, I wouldn't be surprised if someone would raise his hand. Because it says here, 66% were raised by, only 66% were raised by both parents, meaning 34% were not raised by both parents. So that used to be 83% by both parents, now it's only 66. And probably today it's even less because this is a 2021 study. And therefore, 17% thought of committing suicide, and the most common problem is family problem. Depression as a reason for suicide is only 6%, surprisingly. So depression is not the reason. The reason is family problem, 59%. That's super revealing. Kasi they always associate suicide with depression. No, it's family problem. 28% had premarital sex of men, male, age 15 to 24, 16% for female. 20% had exposure to pornography, intentional. 50% had incidental exposure. So many other data of how the family is today. A lot of separations as well. There. So that's why we are promoting Sunday as a family day. So going out together, doing many things together. And that's why we now understand why John Paul II said that Sunday responds to the deepest human yearnings. Thank you.